All right, welcome to the Romans Education Part 2, and this is session 10A. Just as kind of a couple of sentence recap to catch you up with where we are, we're in Romans chapter 12 and verse 8. We've been looking at the practical offices. The first of those practical offices was the office of giving. We know that giving is to perform a particular operation that our Father wants accomplished during this dispensation of Gentile grace. We also know that that by engaging in that operation, we are laboring with our Father. And by laboring with our Father here, it is the practice field, so to speak, for what we'll be doing in the heavenly places throughout the ages to come. That operation that we're laboring with Him is the sustenance and maintenance of the local church, so that has an end to it, in other words, so that it will do the work of the ministry. And of course, we know that has two parts to it. It is getting the gospel to the lost and edifying the saints. Now, the second that we covered was the office of ruling. And there is an operation that is accomplishing as well. Your Heavenly Father doesn't want just a local church in place to do the work of the ministry, but He also knows that there's going to have to be some order and organization and structure to that. And so the office of ruling are the opportunities to labor with our Father in connection with that. That orderliness is creating an atmosphere that allows that to take place to its best ability. And within the walls here where edification is taking place, it's really allowing, it can, but it doesn't affect the evangelism that happens out in our everyday life out in the world quite so much as it does within these walls as we seek to edify the saints. And now that brings us to the office of mercy. So let's put it up there. Now, that office of mercy that you see, by the way, let me just go ahead and give that to you on the PowerPoint. Well, here we go. So, Romans chapter 12 and verse 8, let's read that. Or he that exhorteth on exhortation, he that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. He that ruleth with diligence, he that showeth mercy with cheerfulness. And so that, well, I didn't put it on the PowerPoint, but back in your notes in an earlier lesson, you had that little picture of a bunch of folks building a building, and it said, Figure 1, the practical offices. This is the third on that illustration. If you back up, you'll be able to see that back there. I don't have the page number, so if someone can come up with that, then we'll kind of send everybody there, and you can fill that in. This is where we first introduced giving. Whatever page that's on. When we introduced 39, okay, page 39 in your book, that third blank that gets filled in there is mercy, and it's Romans 12:8. Okay, so don't fill this in on your note taker today. That's the note taker on page 39, right? Okay, so it's like it's a building with about a dozen people. They're up on the roof, they're out in the yard. They're in the house. They're all working. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want us to define the word mercy, because mercy has more than one meaning. And so which one does Paul have in mind as he's writing to us here? Well, look, the normal way that someone thinks about mercy is when someone has committed some kind of an offense where there is some kind of consequence or severity, then they may receive mercy and compassion instead of that consequence. But that's not the context that Paul is using the word mercy in. This is not in the area of justice where you receive a pardon for an offense. Instead, in this context, in Romans chapter 12, this is talking about the practical needs of the body with regard to mercy. And so to discover the way that Paul intends for us to understand the mercy, we have to ask ourselves, how does showing mercy minister to the Lord? Or maybe another way to say that is, because when you minister to the Lord, you do that by ministering to his body. So how in the world does this minister to the body? And what is the operation that's going to be accomplished by that? We're going to fill that in just a moment. So let's look at these definitions just for a moment, the way Paul intended for us to understand the word mercy. Here's the first one. Acts of compassion toward suffering fellow creatures. And this goes in figure 1 of your note taker. So there's a couple of things to fill in here. So there's the first one. In many cases, mercy is going to carry the idea of being treated compassionately when there's been an offense committed. But like I was saying, this is not the way Paul is using it. He is using this instead of being a consequence, because we're actually what's happening is there's some kind of suffering, some kind of malady, some kind of tribulation that's going on. And so the mercy that's being used here is just that way. Let me give you the second one. Acts performed to relieve pain or distress. Now, this is kind of important because this is going to branch out in the next form of doctrine. Trying to think how much to actually say about that at this point. Here's the when there is some kind of adversity or some kind of a problem, then the mercy that Paul is talking about here is having compassion, which is an attitude, and then turning that attitude into actions that help our fellow members. And this is to relieve their pain or distress, just like it goes there. Now look, there's something here that's not in your note taker. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it up on the board because, I mentioned it in the middle of a paragraph, but I didn't like the way that it got brought out or highlighted. So let me do that for you, and I'm going to write it up on the board. Maintaining the well-being of the assembly. I'm going to add something more to that, but if you can write this down somewhere in your book, that's what I should have highlighted it just this way, so that we can see, because this is the office, and this is the operation that God is accomplishing through that office. Maintaining the well-being of the assembly, specifically by, sorry this is so long, but by supplying comfort and relief Now, that's the gist of it, but there's an element of this that we really haven't talked about. And so I'm going to add it in here because this is what is supposed to be in our thinking about that. But by providing comfort and relief to those, let me see how I said that. To those whose suffering may adversely affect their ongoing edification or the living of their sonship life. I know that's long. That really encompasses because there's a reason for all of these details, and that is because this is not just this is the difference between the world doing merciful and charitable, am I in the way? Merciful and charitable things, and us operating out of the office of mercy. When I wrote this note in my notes, I actually inserted this. Maintaining the spiritual well-being. But look, that I'm saying it that way. I didn't give it to you when I first wrote it on the board that way because I didn't want you to get too focused on, oh, it's just that. Look, there are physical things that people will lack that need to be met so that it does not adversely affect their ability to be edified, or it does not adversely affect their ability to live out of their sonship life. Now I'm going to make a statement here that we're going to have to talk way more about next week, but I'm trying to set up this definition of the operation this way. When you first start out, and here we are where? In Romans 12, 3 through 8. It's the first form of doctrine. And when you first start out, you don't have all of the doctrine in place yet. Well, look, the sufferings of this present time don't care that you don't have all the doctrine. So even though you're going to hear me say this again next week, because I'm going to set up some things with that, what I'm talking about here is, look, you can contract some sickness or disease, or be in a terrible car accident or something along those lines, or suffer some kind of medical condition like a heart attack or something. You can do that, and your very life may be threatened. It may be that you perish from that, or maybe you don't, but you're debilitated in some way. And look, and people want to know what's the doctrine that I need to know to deal with this. Well, the thing is, you're only just starting out in the doctrine. Sometimes the sufferings of this present time can overwhelm. There's a way I could illustrate this, but there's some flaws with it. But if I could say it this way, here is your sonship life, and it's little. One day, this will be your sonship life. But when you first start out, you're here. But I don't know what to draw for this. But let's just use a big wall. That's the only thing I really know here. Okay, this is the sufferings of this present time. Okay, so right now that's way bigger than your sonship life. If that wall falls on you, you know. So this will overwhelm your sonship life. And so, and by the way, God knows that, and there's some things that He has put in place to do that. One of those things is the office of mercy. But what He's really concerned about is not just, it's not about preserving physical well-being for the sake of physical well-being. It is about your physical well-being as it affects your ability to be edified and live out of your sonship life. Do you see the subtle difference there? Yeah, Gloria?
Now, a good example.
Okay.
If, say, for example, you suffer a loss, someone close to you dies, a lot of people blame God and just go away from God, say,
Right.
I'm not trusting God anymore. And if you could help them get through that, then you're saving them,
That's
basically.
right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That would be a circumstance whereby someone has, they're encountering something that maybe they don't have the doctrine to be able to deal with yet. The office of mercy is something that would help them as the rest of the body performs that office of mercy. And so what you were saying is, when someone helps them in that. So that's a long definition of the operation, but I wanted us to have all the elements of that in place so that we could see that. The means by which we're going to operate out of this office of mercy are sometimes going to be physical, and sometimes they're going to be spiritual. And so both of those need to kind of be in our arsenal, but they both have the ultimate goal of strengthening the inner man. That's what this office of mercy is meant to do. So once again, maintaining the well-being of the assembly, that's it in a nutshell right there. And once again, it is, why are we interested in doing that? So that that work of the ministry, specifically the edification of the saints, can continue to happen. Because that is the goal. That's the reason we're here. We're not here just to form a club. So all of this comes back to the work of the ministry. And by really most largely the edification of the saints, because that's what's happening within these walls. Now, back to figure 1 in your note taker, let me give you this last part. So we've defined the mercy, and we know what that's about. So now, here's the application. The operation of I'm sorry, I had it on the PowerPoint and I wrote it up on the board. Maintaining the spiritual well-being of the assembly, specifically by providing comfort and relief to those whose suffering may adversely affect their continued edification or the discharge of their godly life. That's what you wrote down that I put on the board. Now, back to figure 1, the application is godly mercy is a willingness to invest whatever is needed to heal the hurts of others because of our godly love for them. Now, when I first put that up there, I just neglected to come back and really spell this out as far as the operation went. So that's why I asked you to write that down somewhere in your notes. So I'll leave that up just for a moment. I know that's quite a bit as well, but that is the application. The willingness to invest whatever is necessary to heal the hurts of others because of our godly love for them. In other words, because we value and esteem them as fellow members of the assembly. Okay. Now, all right, you're still writing? Okay, I'll give you a minute. I know it's a lot, but that's the last lot that you'll have to do. The rest of it's pretty short in comparison to the dictionary. You're the only one. You're the only one that got that. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. I get it. 1 John chapter 3. Is everybody up? Okay. 1 John chapter 3. Let me show you this because the first issue with regard to mercy is compassion. There's going to be 2 issues to this. The first one is compassion. The counterpart to compassion is indifference. I don't care. the world's way to looking at compassion is to have sympathy for someone. And they feel pity, and so they want to help them because of that feeling. And at the end of the day, compassion is a mental attitude. It's a feeling. But the godly version of that is not just a feeling of pity, but it is, like we were putting there on the PowerPoint, the willingness to invest whatever's necessary to help heal their hurts, not because we just feel sorry for them, but because they are one of our fellow members, and we value and esteem them with godly love and charity. And that is a little bit different motivation. Now, 1 John 3:17. I know this is over in those Hebrew epistles at the end of your Bible, but let me tell you that this thing about mercy is interdispensational. It's not just in the dispensation of grace. It is also under the law. It's going to be there after this dispensation of grace is over, and these Hebrew epistles are back and forth. And so 1 John 3:17, yes, this is written to the members of the believing remnant of Israel who are going to be here after the blessed hope, and we've been called out of here, and God's program with Israel is resumed. But look what he says. But whoso hath this world's good, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? That's the idea of compassion. In other words, if you have the ability to help, and you see someone who needs your help, and you decide, I'm not going to help, then he's talking about, don't kid yourself, the love of God is not working in you. And that's what that love is designed to do. Now, and so, although I know that's for them, that same kind of principle is going to be reiterated in Paul's epistles. And one of the reasons we know that is because God has given us a whole office of mercy to do just that with one another. And so the second part of that, compassion, is the action of comforting. And that's the second part of that. So what does it mean to comfort? Well, let me show you some definitions of that. First of all, the number one definition for comfort is to strengthen morally or spiritually, to encourage, hearten, in spirit, in sight. And the number two definition, to support, assist, aid, or abet. And the number five definition, to minister delight or pleasure to gladden or cheer. And then the last one I'll show you is number 7, to soothe in grief or trouble, to relieve of mental distress, to console, solace. That's kind of what Gloria was talking about a while ago in her illustration. And of course, all of that has to be done out of the doctrine with charity. But mercy is that category of offices that provide that relief and remedy to our fellow members who are suffering under some kind of infirmity or tribulation or circumstance. And when we know about it and we have the ability to help them in some way, then that would be operating out of this office of mercy. Now, there's a couple of ways that the Bible talks about this. I want to show both of them to you. And we're going to do this by going back to the Psalms. So the first way that we're going to look at this is, and by the way, this is figure 2 in your note taker. There are 2 ways to have mercy, and the first one is this: to look for opportunities. Because those may not always be talked about. So look for ways, look for opportunities to have mercy. Let me give you just a scripture out of the Psalms that talks about this issue with regard to God showing mercy, and that is Psalm 37:21. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. I'm sorry, this isn't God doing it, it's his people doing it. So the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. In other words, they're the ones that have the resources to be able to help. And so there's a contrast here between the wicked and the righteous. The righteous are looking for opportunities to give to somebody in need, and that's a way of showing mercy. The second way of showing mercy is to have compassion on those in dire circumstances. So we're looking for opportunities, but some opportunities are going to be apparent in and of themselves, and then we get involved in that. Again, there's something in the Psalms about that. I'll give you a minute to get that down, and then we'll go over to Psalm 109 and take a look at verse 16. Again, there's a contrast here about showing mercy to the poor and needy. And so here it is, Psalm 119, verse 16. Because that he remembered not to show mercy, but persecuted the poor and needy man, that he might even slay the broken in heart. So here's someone that did not show mercy to someone who obviously needed that. And so there's a lot of different ways in which we can show mercy. I'm just looking at where we are here as far as the time goes. I want to make sure that we actually manage this correctly. But can you think with me about, Gloria actually gave us one a while ago. Someone has lost a loved one. What is another circumstance in which we can show mercy? Thanks for turning that on, Barb.
You can help out someone that you know is out of a job, or even something simple, providing a babysitter.
Okay. Okay. So helping someone who, if they're out of a job, they don't have resources to be able to provide for things in life. All right. Is somebody else?
I have one
Okay.
on Zoom. If somebody lent you money and then you discovered that they were having financial difficulties and you forgave that debt, that would be showing mercy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, right, right. Okay. All right. Anybody? Look, there is, I just need you to stop and think about this office for a moment. When you're looking for opportunities or being aware of things, sometimes you will hear about those things in a conversation. And you just have to kind of be aware to pick up on that. Is every opportunity for us to show mercy going to be a physical thing? Can people go through mental things as well? Mental tribulations. In fact, we're going to find that that's going to be a big part of it. Going through certain kinds of struggles over circumstances and situations. And because of that, it is going to be very important for the rest of the body to have enough compassion and love for their fellow members to want to comfort them and help them in their time of trouble. And not all of that is going to be solved by a physical thing. And so we need to talk about how that happens. But right now what I'm trying to get to these are the two ways that we do that. First of all, we're looking for the opportunities to see that there's a need. Look, here's what's in my mind when I'm talking about it this way. This work is always fragile. And what I mean by that is just a few circumstances of change can make it would make it difficult to continue. And that's the way it is even in people's lives. There are struggles. Okay, I don't know what to do except just say this. This is one of those times when I would be tempted to go turn off the recording and let me just talk. But I'm just going to say it in a way that everybody can get it. By the way, our Zoom folks get to hear all of that from now on, since we really they're really a part of what we're doing. But look, there are people that are in this sonship study who are going through various types of struggles. Some of them are physical, and they are overwhelming. They don't talk about it, and so unless you're really kind of paying attention and looking at things, then you don't know. And so that's why I'm saying look for opportunities. Then some of those struggles are more mental in nature, and you have to kind of look for the signs of that. I'm just saying this to us so that we can. I'm just trying to be careful. It makes it difficult. I've got some specific things in my mind, but here I don't know how many are on the Zoom today, but there's a normal number that's on there. But if you look on there and there's someone, see, we can't see them physically here. So we have to kind of look over there and see who all is there today, and you don't always catch everybody. But when you see someone that you used to see every single time, and now they haven't shown up in the last 4, 5, 6 times, you know what that is? That to me, that says maybe we need to check in with this person and see. Because sometimes things are going on with people and they don't talk about it, and then suddenly they decide to do something about it, and it catches everybody off guard, and nobody saw it coming. There were no real signs of it overtly because they weren't talking about it. And so as an assembly, we have to kind of be aware of things that give us an indication that everything is okay. How in the world would we do that? How would anybody do that? In a physical assembly or even an assembly with remote members? How will we do that? There is a way to do it, but it's going to require something.
I think you need to be a good listener.
Okay, being a good listener and kind of catching clues of things that get said, yes. But you know what? Here's the thing that I'm after here is that we have to kind of stay in touch with one another. I mean, I know from time to time, folks in this assembly, you know, they're gone on vacation or they're doing something or work as whatever. But look, if all of a sudden, you know, this becomes a regular thing, then you start thinking, is something going on? And you just, out of love for these folks, genuine love for them, we would want to kind of just touch base with them and see if something was going on. Let's head that off before it becomes something that derails their sonship life. And so this office of mercy really requires some mechanics. Talk to you about that in a little bit too. But I'm just talking about ways in which we can show mercy. Some of those are going to be physical things, and some of those are going to be more mental type things that people are going through. So let's go to the next issue here, and that's the directive for mercy. And this is going to be figure 3 in your note taker. So the directive for mercy is, he that showeth mercy with cheerfulness. And so that's the directive, and we get that, of course, out of Romans 12, verse 8. That last line, he that showeth mercy with cheerfulness. Now, we usually think of cheerfulness as at some degree of happiness or joy, but in this case, there has to be joy on our part in the discharge of this office. And I think that that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, because that sets our own attitude on that. So here's the first one. It's cheerfulness on our part, because that sets an attitude in us. This is, when I first looked at that, I thought that seems strange that be the directive here. He that showeth mercy with cheerfulness. In other words, there's a certain attitude that we're supposed to have when we show mercy. Yeah, Barb?
The opposite of doing something begrudgingly.
Yes?
You know, like because you have to. I feel like I have to help these people. I feel like I have to do that. You know,
That-
just weighs you down. But the other side is, like you said, I'm doing it out of love. I love these people, and I want to help.
Yeah, thank you. That is the perfect way to say it. Because too many times, don't we find ourselves going, let me do this, you know, and I look, you know what? I've seen that in my own life plenty of times. Rachel?
The flip side of that, how horrible would you feel if, you know, you actually have a need and somebody's coming to you and it's obvious they don't really want to help you. They just feel put upon and like, you know, you're being such a burden to me that I have to help you.
How does that make them feel? That's really good. So that is the application of that. And you guys caught it pretty quickly. Took me a little longer. But I was cheerful while I was looking for it. Okay. So, and so now the second part of that is the joy and gladness that we're actually going to be able to supply for others. So that's like the other side of that coin. So as I was thinking about cheerfulness, I thought, let me look that up in the Oxford English Dictionary and just see if that definition lends anything to that. And I think we've already kind of got the idea, but here it is. That which gives joy or gladness. See, that kind of fit that second part, right? Comfort, solace, encouragement, consolation. All of those are have a little shade of different meaning to them. All of that has meaning, though, for the folks that we're going to be ministering to out of the office of mercy. And so we ought to have that sincere desire, motivated by love for our fellow members, to give them that kind of comfort. And look, there's a tendency for people to look at these and go, well, I know this one's important and this one's really important, but maybe not so much this one. I actually think mercy is terrifically important, because I think more people could be salvaged. Is that the right word to use? Probably not. Now, I've just equated everyone with junk cars. But you know what? They could be saved from the consequences of being overwhelmed by situations in life by the office of mercy, probably more than any of the others.
I think an important part would just to be approachable. I've had people come up to me because they said, you look like someone I could talk to. And a lot of people aren't approachable to a lot of people.
Right. And I don't know how to, you're right, and I don't know how to, I don't know what the subtle difference is. Barb? Are you on?
I thought I was, but I wasn't.
Okay.
Giving and ruling are also part of mercy, because everything should be done out of cheerfulness and compassion.
Well, it should. It should. Actually, you know, our giving with simplicity is going to be out of our love, right? And the ruling that we're doing is not so we can be the big shot, but because we can actually serve the body out of love. And the mercy is so closely connected to love that I see your connection to these others. But like we said a while ago, with cheerfulness, see, it's because we have a sincere desire to do it rather than, well, I guess I got to go help them. So I do see that connection there, and there is a little bit of, by the way, there's a bleed over the other way too. If you're showing mercy to someone by helping them out, by maybe paying their then that would be giving as well. So there's kind of a hybrid of that takes place there, but these the kind of giving that we're talking about here really is the sustenance of the local assembly. this ruling is bringing order to it. But this mercy, look, it's like taking care of the parts. The other is like the machinery, and mercy is like the mechanic that when a part breaks down, fixes it. Okay, now I've likened us to junk cars and machinery. This is going great today. Yeah, right. So let me give you an example of how important this is going to be. As we continue through the education, there's going to come a time when the sufferings of Christ are going to kick in. And so let me read this to you in Corinthians where Paul talks about this. He says in 1 Corinthians 4:8, now ye are full, now ye are rich, ye have reigned as kings without us. And I would to God you did reign, that we also might reign with you. For I think that God has set forth us the apostles last, as it were appointed to death. For we are made a spectacle unto the world, and to angels, and to men. We are fools for Christ's sake, but ye are wise in Christ. We are weak, but ye are strong. Ye are honorable, but we are despised. Even unto this present hour. Now just think about these words. We both hunger and thirst, and are naked, and are buffeted, and have no certain dwelling place. That's a condition. We read verse 11, and almost like it doesn't faze us unless you stop and think about what Paul is saying. I haven't had enough to eat. There's times when I haven't had enough to drink or appropriate clothing to wear. I've been beat up. I don't have any place I can call home. Verse 12, in labor, working with our own hands, being reviled, we bless, being persecuted, we suffer it, being defamed, we entreat. We are made as the filth of the world, and are the offscouring of all things unto this day. That's the opinion that was being put out there. Now I'm going to ask you a question. If our sonship life today, if that was the description of it, how many of us would be here next week? Okay. I mean, I would hope we would, but I have to tell you, that is a tough way to live. And it would all, here's the thing Paul knows. It would all go away if he would stop his sonship life. They'd let him back in. He'd be a member in good standing. All of a sudden, he'd have the things that he needed. He'd have enough to eat, have clothes to wear, have a place to live. And so I'm just saying, so why am I making that point? I'm not just saying that to say Paul had a hard time, but here's what I'm saying. When the policy of evil becomes directed at us individually and personally, and the sufferings of Christ begin to produce these kinds of effects, how valuable will it be to be part of an assembly where people are skilled in the office of mercy, to be able to come alongside, and when Milt and Barbara, they're under this attack of the policy of evil, and Milt now weighs the same as Barbara. When they get to that point, you know what? Something's happening. But it means this assembly has to be able to recognize what's going on and come alongside them. And in the office of mercy, help. Now, I did that because I couldn't resist the urge to talk about Milt weighing the same as Barbara, because he keeps coming down and losing that weight. He's doing pretty good. So anyway, I'm just saying that when those things happen, we are really going to need an assembly that is schooled and skillful in the office of mercy. Yes.
See, evil?
Yes.
Are we going to know that we're being attacked by the policy of evil and not that of just the world?
Yes, sir. Yes, you will. You'll have to. And here's why. Because Satan, the whole purpose of that, the sufferings of Christ, which is that individualized attack of the policy of evil, the whole purpose of that is to get you to stop your sonship life. If you don't know that's what it is, you'll just continue on just like you do with everything else. He needs you to know exactly what you're doing that he doesn't like, and you'll know exactly what to stop in order to get relief from the attack against you. The answer is yes. Yes. So now, at this place in your notes, in your notebooks, you're actually come to a place where it's a summation of the practical offices. And what I was going to do is just take these three, and I was going to try to draw them all together and just do a quick summation to end up this lesson. And when I was doing the book, I thought that was the perfect thing to do there. But instead, I am going to put that off until next week. And the reason is because there's something very important that I need to talk to you about. Now, I made some notes here to just talk about this just for a moment, but I should have put this in the book. So this week, everybody is going to get in their email an addendum, which is actually going to be lesson 10B. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to everyone the mechanics of the proper discharge of the office of mercy. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's suppose that someone is in the hospital and you're going to go visit them. That would be a great opportunity to discharge the office of mercy. And depending on what's happening with them, I mean, you know what? Maybe it's a routine type deal. Well, okay, but maybe it's something more life-threatening and more serious. What I would like for us to be able to do is be equipped so that we could confidently walk into that room and actually say some things to them that would actually be the functioning of this office of mercy, that it does encourage them and it does lift them up and it does cause them to start thinking about things the right way. And then when you get ready to leave that room, as people so often do, and they say, "Would you pray for me?" Then when it comes to that kind of situation, because of our understanding of what God is doing in this dispensation of Gentile grace, having that proper prayer and knowing what to say is something that I think is still elusive for many of us. And so the mechanics of this office of mercy is to say, I have a real opportunity here to minister to these people out of the office of mercy and actually do them some good. And so what I'd like for us to know is, what is the recipe that goes into that prayer? How should it be made up? What are the parts of that? And the second thing is, and what should I expect is the benefit of praying that prayer? In other words, we can't just be talking for the sake of talking so we can say we prayed. There's supposed to be some kind of a benefit to that. So what I want to do is take next week and talk about when you're at that hospital bed, someone's about to go into surgery, and maybe there is a chance they don't come through that surgery. What is it that you should be saying to them that will actually be beneficial to your fellow member? What is it you'll be praying that actually is supposed to do, and what is that something it's supposed to do? Maybe you're, now, let me give you another situation. Maybe you're just writing a card. In that card, I mean, when we write somebody a birthday card, we just normally say happy birthday. But if someone is going through an event or a circumstance and that's the reason for your card, wouldn't it be great to know what you ought to be jotting down there? And there's some rules to understand about this. In other words, listen, let me just say it this way. When you're standing at the hospital bed, that is not the time to teach someone a lesson. It's not the time to preach a sermon. But knowing what to say and how to say it will allow you to confidently operate out of this office of mercy in a lot of different situations. So I was talking about maybe you're just kind of writing a note to someone. If that note is going to do what mercy is intended to do, then we need to understand the kinds of things that need to be in that note. Maybe you hear about someone that's going through a very difficult circumstance, and you have a desire to help them. Wouldn't it be great to know some things that you could say that in this particular circumstance would be helpful for them? That's the mechanic. See, we have talked about the office itself. Yes, we could just end it here. But the mechanics of how to carry that out, I don't think we can end this lesson without saying, here's how you do it. I think it just makes sense for us to have that. And so, and by the way, the more we do that, so next week, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to talk to you about knowing what to say with regard to who your audience is. If you're talking to someone who already knows things about sonship like you do, there's one way to talk to them. But how about someone who is saved, but they know nothing about right division, they know nothing about sonship? You know what? You're going to be talking to them in a little bit of a different way. Otherwise, you'll be saying things to them they have absolutely no understanding of and no frame of reference for. And what about the times when you're talking to someone who is not saved? They don't know the Lord. Your conversation with them is going to be very different as well. But before we leave this, let me just say that what we're talking about in the office of mercy is primarily for dealing with the other members of this assembly. Eventually, we will extend that office of mercy to members of the body of Christ that are not part of that assembly, but this is where we learn it first, and this is where we kind of get our feet under us to be able to do that. So I am very excited about us learning how to do that. And I don't think that we can end our study without getting that and understanding how to take those different situations and come alongside and help. So this lesson has already been written, and in fact, I'll bring you the notes for it next week, and you can just slip them in your notebook, but everybody will get that in an email just so you'll have it. Okay, so we'll stop here. This is the end of lesson 10A.